I want you to picture a scene. It's maybe a Tuesday morning. You're at a coffee shop,
Hmm.
and there's this guy in a really expensive suit. He looks like he runs a hedge fund or something, and he's standing at the counter.
Okay.
The barista hands him his latte, and apparently it has foam when he asks for no foam. And this grown man just snaps.
Uh-oh.
He throws the cup in the trash, this like violent force, storms out, maybe kicks the door, and you're just standing there thinking, okay, physically that is a 40-year-old man,
Right.
but emotionally, that was a toddler who missed his nap.
It's such a jarring image, but it's one we see all the time, isn't it? It forces you to ask, is that an adult reacting, or is it a frightened child just masquerading as one?
Exactly. And that disconnect between the resume and the reaction, that's what we're unpacking today. We're doing a deep dive into the concept of the wounded inner child.
Hmm.
But I want to be really clear here. We aren't just doing the standard pop psychology version where we blame our parents and call it a day. We're looking at this through a much wider lens.
Right. We are looking at this through the lens of Spiritist psychology. We're pulling from a stack of incredibly dense and profound material today, specifically the writings of the Spirit author Joanna de Angelis, psychographed by the medium Divaldo Franco.
And for those in our audience who follow this philosophy, you know that Joanna de Angelis doesn't do fluff. She combines Jungian depth psychology with a very rigorous spiritual view.
She certainly does.
We're pulling insights primarily from 3 of her books: Autodescobrimento, which is self-discovery; In Inner Search, Amor, Imbatível Amor, or Love, Unbeatable Love; and Confidos Existencias, Existential Conflicts.
And the mission for this deep dive is really specific. We want to understand the mechanics of why we stay stuck in these childish patterns, and more importantly, how the self, the eternal spirit, can actually step in and heal the ego.
To fix these unconscious records of neglect. So let's start with the diagnosis. Joanna de Angelis uses this term, psychological infancy. It sounds a bit like an insult, to be honest. Oh, stop being such a baby. But she means something very technical by it, doesn't she?
She does. And it's not meant as an insult. It's more of a clinical observation of a spiritual state. She asserts that while biological aging is automatic, you don't have to try to get gray hair, they just happen. Emotional maturity is not.
It's not automatic. It takes work.
It requires conscious effort. So you end up with millions of people who are biologically adult, but psychologically they're arrested in childhood.
So the hardware upgraded, but the software is still running version 1.0.
Precisely. And the source material highlights some really specific symptoms that show up in adulthood. It's not just about throwing coffee cups. It's deep insecurity, emotional dependency, and what the text calls bizarre behaviors that stem from fear.
Bizarre behaviors. That's an interesting phrase.
It refers to actions that just don't match the reality of the situation. So, for example, extreme jealousy. A partner arrives 10 minutes late. A mature adult thinks, oh, must be traffic.
Right.
The adult suffering from psychological infancy thinks, they are leaving me, I am worthless, I need to punish them. That is the wounded child literally taking over the controls of the adult body.
Wow. And one concept from existential conflicts that really struck me was ambivalence. I think a lot of listeners will recognize this either in themselves or maybe their partners. It's that I hate you, don't leave me dynamic.
That is the classic definition of it. It's a complete tug of war in the soul. The adult craves affection desperately because the inner child is just starving for it. But the moment they get close to someone,
They push them away.
they act with cruelty or they isolate themselves.
But why do we do that? It seems so counterproductive. If you want love, why bite the hand that's trying to feed you?
Because for the wounded child, love was dangerous. If you were raised with severity or negligence or what Joanna de Angelis calls a castrating education,
A castrating education.
an environment that punishes authenticity and vulnerability, you learn that the people who are supposed to love you are also the ones who hurt you.
So the brain literally wires love and pain together.
Exactly. The source details explain that the child starts to believe they don't deserve love. So when they get it as an adult, it feels suspicious. It feels unsafe. The inner child is screaming for connection, but the wounded ego is just screaming, abort mission. Vulnerability leads to pain.
And I'm guessing this is where the concept of the mask comes in, because if I can't be myself, I have to be someone else just to survive.
That is the tragedy of it. To survive a hostile or cold home, the child creates a persona, a mask. They become the perfect student, or the funny one, or the invisible one. They hide their true feelings to please the adults or just to avoid punishment.
And Joanna de Angelis points out that in adulthood, this results in a total loss of identity.
A total loss.
You wake up at 30, and realize you don't actually know who you are.
Mhm.
You only know who you needed to be to keep your mom from yelling or, your dad from leaving.
And that realization is often what triggers a midlife crisis. The mask just gets too heavy to carry.
Okay, so that's the psychological baseline.
Mm.
Standard therapy might say, okay, let's look at your childhood, process the trauma, move on. But this is where the Spiritist angle throws a massive wrench in the gears, because Joanna de Angelis says we aren't just blank slates written on by our parents.
This is the pivot point that changes everything. Traditional psychology often views the newborn as a tabula rasa, a blank page. If the page is messy, well, it's because the parent spilled ink on it.
Right.
Spiritist psychology posits that we are heirs to ourselves.
Heirs to ourselves, that is a heavy phrase. It implies that I'm not just walking into this life empty-handed.
You are not. You are bringing heritages from past lives.
Yep.
Guilt, tendencies, debts, emotional patterns. The child isn't just a victim of the parents. The child is an ancient spirit continuing a very, very long story.
Now, I have to play devil's advocate here, because this is where some people might get uncomfortable. The source material talks about the parent-child relationship having a karmic link, and specifically that parents might unconsciously reject a child because of past life animosity.
It is a difficult truth to digest, for sure.
It sounds a little like victim blaming, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, if a child is abused and we say, well, they were enemies in a past life, are we letting the parent off the hook?
That is a crucial distinction to make, and the text is very, very clear on this. It does not excuse the abuse. The parent who abuses or neglects a child is failing their current test, adding to their own debt, and acting against the laws of love.
Okay, so the parent is still fully responsible for their actions in this life.
100%. Absolutely. But the reincarnationist perspective provides the context for the dynamic. Have you ever seen a parent who seems to have an unjustified antipathy toward one specific child?
Oh, sadly, yes.
Yeah.
It seems totally irrational.
They treat the other siblings fine, but this one child just irritates them by, just by breathing. Joanna de Angelis suggests that this irrational feeling is an unconscious memory. In a previous life, that child might have been an adversary or a betrayer, someone who caused the parent great pain. The spirit remembers, even if the conscious brain doesn't.
So the tension at the dinner table isn't just about spilled milk. It might be about a betrayal from 300 years ago.
Correct. And understanding this helps the victim, the adult child, stop asking, what is wrong with me? Why am I unlovable? The answer becomes, there is nothing wrong with me as a child. I am just caught in this historical web of repair.
That reframes the suffering completely. It
Yeah.
shifts it from, I am trash, to I am in a really difficult classroom.
That is the term she uses, educational methods. The friction is meant to awaken the spirit. The ego interprets it as pure pain and injustice, but the spirit can use it as leverage to evolve. We are placed in the exact families we need to resolve these ancient knots.
And speaking of ego and self, these terms get thrown around so much in pop culture. Oh, he has a big ego. But in Autodescubrimiento, she defines them very specifically, and they seem to be at war with each other.
It is a battle for command. In this context, the ego is the defense mechanism. It's the mask. It's the source of caprice, the need to dominate. It's a production of your current state of consciousness. It's the part of you that's screaming, I need to win, I need to be safe, I need to be right.
And the self.
The self is the you profundo, the deep you. It's the divine spark, the eternal spirit. The self knows it is immortal. The self isn't afraid of being abandoned because it knows it is connected to God. The whole goal of our psychological maturation is for the self to take the steering wheel away from the ego.
But the ego does not want to give up that wheel.
No, it acts like a terrified child gripping it for dear life.
Yeah.
The ego tries to protect that wounded inner child using what she calls escapist mechanisms.
Like depression, anxiety.
Yes, or addiction, whether it's drugs, alcohol, or even what the text calls violent diversions.
Violent diversions, what does that mean?
Risky behavior, aggression, seeking out conflict. These are all the ego's way of saying, I can't deal with this deep internal pain, so I'm going to create chaos outside to distract myself from what's happening inside.
Okay, there's a phrase in the notes that gave me chills. The cruel inner child. We usually think of the inner child as this innocent, weeping victim. But the source suggests it can get nasty.
It can. And this is vital to understand for anyone dealing with, say, a difficult boss or a toxic partner. If that insecure child remains in the subconscious, unhealed, it doesn't just stay a victim, it turns the adult into a tyrant.
So this is the cycle of abuse, isn't it?
It is. The text says, the adult who did not mature psychologically feels displaced. He hates his own weakness of character, envying the strong. So to compensate, they project their own childhood suffering onto others. They become the bully to avoid ever feeling like the victim again.
So the person screaming at the waiter or the parent belittling their kid, that is actually a frightened 5-year-old trying to feel big.
Precisely. They are acting out of the cruel inner child. They are terrified of their own weakness, so they attack weakness wherever they see it in others.
Okay, so we've diagnosed the problem, and it's deep. We have a wounded child protected by a defensive ego, carrying baggage from past lives. How in the world do we fix this? The outline mentions psychological rebirth. That sounds grand, but what does it look like on a Tuesday?
Psychological rebirth is the conscious decision to reparent yourself. This is the aha moment.
Right.
You stop waiting for your biological parents to apologize. You stop waiting for them to change. You accept that they couldn't give you what you needed, perhaps due to their own spiritual debts.
So the adult self has to step in and parent the inner child.
That's it. You take on the job.
Okay, practical application time. The source mentions visualization. Now, I know some people roll their eyes at this thinking it's just daydreaming, but Joanna de Angelis treats it as a serious therapeutic tool. How do we do it?
It's so much more than daydreaming. It is literally reprogramming. The text suggests a specific practice. You find a quiet moment, and you actually visualize your inner child. Maybe you see yourself at age 5 or 6.
Okay, so I'm closing my eyes. I see the younger me. Maybe I even see the moment I was hurt or felt abandoned. Then what?
You don't just watch. You, as the adult you are now, you step into that scene. You embrace the child. You talk to them. You replace the perturbing images of the past with affectionate, loving visualizations.
So I'm basically rewriting the memory.
You're overriding the emotional charge of the memory. You tell that child, you are safe now. I am here. This was not your fault. You deserve to be loved.
That sounds simple, but I can imagine it brings up a lot of resistance, a lot of pain.
It does. But the subconscious doesn't distinguish much between a vivid visualization and physical reality. So when you consistently offer that child love, you are literally altering the neural and spiritual pathways. You are filling the void that the parents left.
But what about the guilt? The text mentions autopunisum, self-punishment. I feel like so many of us are stuck there. We feel stupid for still being affected by this stuff. We think, I'm 40, I should be over this.
That guilt is the ego talking again. Joanna de Angelis emphasizes the importance of stopping self-punishment immediately. You must accept that you are a victim of your parents' limitations, but, and this is the key, you are now responsible for your own healing.
It's that distinction between fault and responsibility again. It's not your fault you were wounded, but it is your responsibility to bandage the wound.
Precisely. There's a great phrase she uses, digesting the problem. We must identify the error without guilt. You look at it clinically. You say, okay, this happened. This is why I have this fear of abandonment. And then you move toward repair. You don't beat yourself up for having the wound.
Right.
Just like you wouldn't beat yourself up for having a broken leg.
And then comes the big one. The one everyone struggles with. Forgiveness.
Yes. Forgiveness is not optional in the Spiritist framework of healing, but we need to define what it actually is because people often get it wrong.
Right. It's not saying what you did was okay.
No, not at all. Forgiveness is a change in your internal state. It is understanding that the parents were also struggling souls, debtors in the process of redemption. They were likely acting out of their own unhealed inner children.
Hurt people hurt people. It's a cliche because it's true.
And realizing that helps release what she calls the mental vices of resentment. If you hold on to the hate, you are still drinking the poison they gave you. Forgiving them is just putting the cup down. It frees you, not them.
I want to touch on the so what here, the practical result of all this work. The source makes a reference to Jesus that I think is really interesting, even if you aren't religious. It calls him the ideal psychotherapist.
It is a powerful metaphor for integration. If you strip away the dogma and just look at the figure of Jesus, you see someone perfectly aligned with the self. He's never defensive. He's never triggered by his ego. He operates from a place of being rather than having.
Being versus having. Unpack that a bit.
The ego is obsessed with having status, having control, having validation from others. The self focuses on being peaceful, being honest, being loving.
So when we heal the inner child, we shift from, I need you to tell me I'm good, to, I know I'm good.
Exactly. And that leads to the shift from reacting to acting. The wounded child reacts. It's animal instinct, a trigger, an explosion. The healed self acts. It's a conscious, reasoned choice.
That's the goal, isn't it? To stop being a puppet to your past.
It is the ultimate sign of emotional maturity. The text describes it as moving from possessive love, which is infantile, and says, I love you, so you must do what I want, to plenary love,
Plenary love.
which loves simply because it is the nature of the self to love. It demands nothing in return.
That feels like true freedom, not needing the world to validate you because you have finally validated yourself.
It is. And that is when the wounded inner child finally grows up. They aren't silenced or locked in a closet. They're integrated. They become a source of creativity, spontaneity, and joy, rather than fear and tantrums.
It's a beautiful thought. We aren't killing the inner child. We are raising them.
Exactly. We are finally giving them the parent they always deserved.
So to bring this all together, we start with an adult acting out, and we realize it's actually a terrified child in a suit. We look deeper and see that this child is carrying wounds not just from this life, but potentially from past lives. We are heirs to ourselves.
And we recognize that while the ego tries to protect us with masks and aggression, the true cure lies in the spirit, the self taking charge. Through visualization, stopping the self-punishment, and active forgiveness, we can actually rewire those deep patterns.
It takes the victimhood out of the equation and puts the power right back in our hands.
It empowers us to finally break the cycle.
I want to leave our listeners with a provocative thought from the source material that really stuck with me. If we are indeed heirs to ourselves, then the wounds you carry aren't just random accidents. They aren't just things that happen to you.
No, they're challenges you specifically signed up for.
Right. So if you were to view your trauma not as a mistake, but as your own customized curriculum for evolution, literally the lesson plan you need right now to master yourself, how would your behavior change tomorrow?
It stops being a tragedy and starts being a mission.
And that is a mission worth accepting. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Always a pleasure. Take care.